Hello, welcome to this video on interfaces. So in this video, we're going to talk about what an interface is. We'll talk about the naming conventions for interfaces. We'll show how to define an interface and how to implement an interface. So first of all, what is an interface? Well, it's a contract that requires a class to implement certain methods. And this allows the programmer to write more generic code. So we'll see what this means with an example. So without an interface, this is our current design, the player collision script has to have its own logic written for how to deal with a coin, for how to deal with a ramp, for how to deal with an obstacle. Ramp is a theoretical one, but we could put that one in. How to deal with power-ups, how to deal with checkpoints, all the different types of things that the player could collide with. We need different logic in player collision to deal with that. But an interface allows us to identify that, okay, coins, obstacles, and maybe in the future ramps and power-ups, well, these are all things that the player can collide with. And so we can say, well, these all can implement a common interface called maybe iCollidable, and we'll talk about the naming convention in a moment. But what this means is that the player collision script only needs to be able to talk to one thing, which is that iCollidable interface. And the interface can handle its interaction with the rest of the scripts. And so this is what we're going to do in this video, is implement this interface and see how it really helps us separate the player collision script from these things that the player is colliding with. And so that's called decoupling code. And in general, if we have code that's really tightly coupled, that's really dependent on each other, it's harder to expand that, harder to scale that. And so interfaces allow us to really decouple the player collision script from these things that we're colliding with. So let's head back to Unity here, and we'll see, first of all, how we define an interface. So I'm going to go, it's just a script that we're going to write. You make a new C# script. And for the naming convention, interfaces often will start with a capital letter I. That just indicates that that's an interface. And then I'm going to write collidable. So this is an iCollidable, or rather, every coin, every obstacle will be an iCollidable. So I will open up that file. And here, the first thing we're going to do is change this word class. So a class is a specific type of thing that contains fields and methods. We're going to define an interface instead. And the interface is just going to contain methods. So we'll take away mono behavior. It's just public interface iCollidable. Take away these methods there. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, anything that wants to implement this interface needs to sign this contract. And that contract is that it needs to implement this public method called onCollideWithPlayer. And normally when you define a method, you're going to put these curly brackets afterwards and no semicolon at the end. But in an interface, you're actually going to leave the method with no body, and you're just going to put the semicolon there. And what that says is that this is just a contract that different classes will sign. And so for a class to sign a contract, to agree to implement this interface, what we do is we go over to that class. So this coin is going to be an iCollidable. So this coin is currently inheriting from this mono behavior base class. We can also add interfaces after here. So you put a comma and you put the name of the interface. So it's iCollidable. And right away we're going to see an error. It's a good error to have. It says the coin has not satisfied its agreement. Right? The coin agreed by signing this contract with iCollidable that it would implement this onCollideWithPlayer. This one right here. And coin hasn't done that yet. So that's what they want us to do. Now, before we fill that in, let's just see what the big picture of implementing this interface is that if we go back to player collision, well, player collision actually doesn't need to figure out, am I hitting a coin, am I hitting an obstacle, etc. So I'm going to move this down. I'm going to put it all in a big group comment, a block comment, so we don't lose it. But we're going to write a different, basically we'll copy one of these, and I'm going to say iCollidable, and I'll call this a collidable. So this is a reference to an iCollidable. Currently it's null. And I can copy this if statement here. If other.tryGetComponent out, and instead of coin, I'm going to put collidable. So here I'm trying to get a component, a component of type collidable. And coin is a component of type iCollidable. So because I've implemented this interface, coin does satisfy this condition of having an iCollidable component here. So this will return true for a coin. And later, once we implement this in obstacle, it'll also return true for obstacle. And now here, instead of saying, well, here's the specific logic for a coin, what I would like to do is, I'll get rid of these two lines because they're saved in comments down here. I actually want to go take that reference to the collidable, and I want to call this onCollideWithPlayer method. Now, what does it mean for a collidable to call onCollideWithPlayer? Well, there's no definition here. So it actually doesn't come from this interface definition here. It actually comes from every coin or every obstacle defining what this iCollidable looks like. So for coin, it's going to look like, well, first of all, we can implement this interface. So if I click on this, no, not that error, it should give me an option to fix it. Quick actions, implement interface. So that's kind of a nice little shortcut. But in case we don't use that, I'll show you, right? We can take this onCollideWithPlayer, put that in coin here, and we actually have to give it a body in the coin class. And so now this coin, this error went away here because this coin is now implementing onCollideWithPlayer. And now the coin says, well, what specifically do we do on collision with player? Well, I'm just going to write debug.log collided with a coin, just so that we know that this is currently working. And later on, we'll get this functionality actually working again. But what we have is, if we hit an iCollidable, then what we're doing is we're calling onCollideWithPlayer on that iCollidable. So that should work for a coin currently, which we will just verify right now. Okay, we'll look at our console, click on the player, drag it into a coin. Okay, so we see collided with a coin is still being detected, but nothing's being detected for an obstacle right now. So your challenge is to modify the obstacle class so that it implements the interface. And then make sure you call debug.log in both the coin and the obstacles onCollideWithPlayer method to ensure that they're both working. So I will let you pause the video and try the challenge. Okay, good job trying the challenge. So let's take a look at our obstacle class. Currently, it does not implement this interface. So I'm going to go write iCollidable, press tab to finish it off, and sure enough, we have the same error here. It does not implement this interface. So it doesn't implement the specific method, rather. So I'm going to go public void on CollideWithPlayer, and I don't feel like typing it out, so I'll copy the name here. And now I can just put a debug.log collided with this obstacle. Okay, and the player collision script actually doesn't need to change. So that's one of the big benefits here, is that I can write a new class, implement the interface, and define this method, and actually player collision automatically knows how to deal with it as long as that new class is an iCollidable. So let's save that there. Okay, we'll just make sure that we are detecting a collision with an obstacle. And sure enough, we are. So that's fantastic. We now are able to distinguish between coins and obstacles without the use of tags like we had before, and without even needing to know what we're colliding with. We're just colliding with an iCollidable. So that's the power of interfaces. In the next video, we're going to practice using interfaces a little bit more. So we will see you in the next video.